Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, bringing you a quick Enhancement Shaman guide going briefly over talents, rotation, artifact weapon, and stat weights. So let's get it started. We'll go over talents first. Opening up the talent tree. Don't bother with Windsong. It's okay, but it does add another button. It does increase your attack speed by 35% for 20 seconds, but Boulder Fist, in my opinion, is much better. It hits the target for up to 200,000 at good gear levels, if not more, also increasing your critical strike chance and damage you deal by 5%, and you can maintain this 100% uptime on top of generating additional Maelstrom compared to Rockbiter. Hot Hand is for a more passive player. You just want extra procs from your melee attacks with Flame Tongue active. It does hit a lot harder, but in my opinion, the bonuses you'll get from critical strike chance and more damage, longevity-wise, when you're looking for sustained damage from Boulder Fist, will be a lot better. Going towards level 30, don't bother with Rainfall. The healers should be able to heal just fine. The two contenders here are Windrush Totem. Windrush Totem, you throw a totem on the ground, and as your allies move through it, they get 60% increased movement speed for 5 seconds. Feral Lunge is more a leveling talent or a PvP talent. Essentially, it's the same thing that warriors do with the charge, just with a longer cooldown, and it does a little bit of damage. Going towards level 45, Voodoo Totem is more PvP based. You can use it if you're leveling if you want to. The other two contenders here, you got Lightning Surge Totem, which does the same thing as it has for the last couple expansions. However, you get to place it on the ground now instead of dropping it at your feet. Same thing with Earth Grub Totem, same thing as it's been for the last couple expansions. Does root them and then slows their movement speed. So if you've got a bunch of ads that you just want to slow instead of stun, maybe they're spread out a little more, Earth Grub Totem will give you a little bit of raid utility as well. Going towards level 60, don't bother with Lightning Shield. The passive damage from ads hitting you, it might be good for leveling, but the other two contenders here, you've got Ancestral Swiftness, increasing your haste by 10%, and Hailstorm. Essentially, if you use Frostbrand, which you should be if you're Enhancement Shaman, it gives your melee attacks additional frost damage, and as you stack Mastery, that damage is only going to increase as well, which we'll go over stat weights after the talents. Looking at level 75, you got Tempest. Whenever your Storm Strike resets, you get 2 charges of Storm Strike, and they do cost 50% less Maelstrom. Overcharge, don't bother. You should always be in melee range if you can help it. This one essentially uses a bunch of Maelstrom to make your Lightning Bolt hit less than a Lava Lash or a Storm Strike, so don't bother. Empowered Storm Lash now spreads to 1 additional target and deals 35% additional damage. It's not bad, but Tempest is always going to be much better just because it gives you 2 Storm Strike charges, where Storm Lash is more raid utility. It's okay, but pick Tempest. Level 90, you've got Crashing Storm. Whenever you hit Crashed Lightning, you will leave a little AoE patch on the ground, as long as the people stand in it or the ads stand in it, they can take a little more damage. Fury of Air, it does cover a lot more ground, but it does drain your Maelstrom, and just doesn't do enough damage, in my opinion, for the amount of Maelstrom it takes up. Sundering is good for PvP and leveling. Does the same thing as in Heroes of the Storm. You smack the ground and you make a little line of the ground where you knock guys to the side. Does a good amount of damage, I'm not going to lie, but when it comes to longevity and passives for this one, Sundering takes too much Maelstrom, where Crash Storm will give you the added bonus, and you can do it more often without eating up all your Maelstrom for 1 attack. Finally, level 100 talents, you've got Ascendance, which unfortunately it took away from our regular spells and made it into a talent, which does suck, but it's actually a good cooldown. It's only 3 minutes, it used to be 5, and they did fix it. You generate a lot of Maelstrom throughout it, and your melee attacks and special attacks turn into wind attacks, which doing that does make them bypass armor, but it does give you another cooldown to need to worry about, and the cooldown is kind of long. You can't reset it anyway. Looking at Landslide, if you go with Boulder Fist, or if you choose to stick with Rockbiter, essentially those attacks increase your agility by 8% for 10 seconds, which longevity-wise, like I was saying earlier, if you do maintain your uptime on Boulder Fist, you should be able to maintain this as well. So essentially you have 8% agility indefinitely throughout the fight, which is great if you can stay in range and keep attacking and generating Maelstrom. Earth and Spike is a more leveling or a PvP talent. Essentially, you make a spike come up from the ground and impale the guy. You do a decent amount of damage, and it also increases the amount of physical and nature damage you deal to the target by 15% for 10 seconds. Does take up to 30 Maelstrom. Like I said, this one's a passive, which in my opinion, over the course of a longer fight, you'll get a lot more damage from the increased agility than you will from Earth and Spike. So going over stat weights throughout the last couple of expansions, Enhancement Shamans have thrived on Mastery and Haste, and they continue to do so. For our Mastery, it does stay the same, where it increases our Fire, Frost, and Nature damage by a good amount, but they added something as well whenever you get a chance to reset your Storm Strike. So it says increase your chance to trigger Stormbringer and Wind Fury by 3% at my Mastery level, and increases your damage. If you look down here, Stormbringer, what it does, each of your main hand attacks has an 8% chance to reset the remaining cooldown on Storm Strike, and cause your next Storm Strike to cost 50% less Maelstrom and trigger no cooldown. Now, if you talent it right with Tempest, you get 2 of those Storm Strikes for 50% less, instead of just 1, which is why I suggest Tempest. Don't bother with crit, it does help, but if you do it right, you're going to be getting a little extra crit from Boulder Fist, so you can just stack Haste and Mastery like crazy. Simple rotation, what Blizzard's done with a lot of classes these days, it just make them into all their resources into a build and spend kind of playstyle, where you build up resources and then you spend them however you choose. So I do like that they actually gave Enhancement Shamans a resource to work with instead of just using cooldowns as a resource like they used to. So they actually gave us something to keep track of, which is good. Essentially, you want to keep Boulder Fist on cooldown as much as possible while weaving in both your Flame Tongue and Frostbrand, because in my personal opinion you should be using Hailstorm to get that added passive damage. Your main Maelstrom dumps are going to be Storm Strike, which has a pretty hefty cooldown but can be reset through Stormbringer. And of course Lava Lash, which is our bread and butter Maelstrom dump, which does a good amount of damage as well. It's really just a Maelstrom dump when you have nothing else to do and everything's on cooldown. Going through your artifact, you've got Doom Winds, essentially making all of your attacks proc Wind Fury, and Wind Fury hits 200% harder, so you're going to be hitting like a truck for about 6 seconds and then going back into sustained damage. Main cooldowns, the one you don't have to talent into is Feral Spirit. You still get your Spirit Wolves, and what's nice about using Maelstrom now, every time each wolf attacks you get 5 Maelstrom. And if you do it right, we'll go over the artifact weapon. They actually do a little bit of cleave damage once you get that far into your talent tree. So, that being said, let's go towards your artifact weapon. So finally we get Doomhammer. Once you unlock all 3, you're going to be hitting like a truck. If you're going to start off all the way down here, the one I've seen that's best for cleave damage, if you go all the way up to Doom Wolves up here, essentially whenever you pop your wolves, each wolf has a chance to get a certain attunement to either fire, frost, or lightning, giving them some little extra damage. It does help for a little burst damage. The other golden dragon on the left hand side here, you've got Doom Vortex. Essentially, Lava Lash has a chance to summon a fiery tornado, dealing a good amount of damage over 3 seconds to enemies that are within melee range. And your final golden dragon on the other side of Doomhammer is Unleash Doom. Essentially, Storm Strike has a chance to unleash the power of Doomhammer, causing your special attacks to heave either lava or lightning at your target for a good amount of damage. I'm sure that scales as well with your Mastery, since that's both fire damage and so on. Throughout the tree, you actually get to heal a little bit more. Healing Surge, since Enhancement Shamans are a little squishy this expansion, having that bonus right there is very nice. And if you go on the other side, whenever you activate Astral Shift, you're going to be healing yourself over 15 seconds, which is good as well for survivability. The way I went directly to Doom Wolves. I'm going to be hitting the Doom Vortex for the Fire Tornadoes. And then once I go through God knows how much artifact power, I'm going to get the Unleashed Doom on the other side to give me a little extra passive damage after I Storm Strike things. That's really about it. Enhancement Shamans bring a lot of raid utility with all the totems, all the stuns, as well as Storm Lash. Every time your weapons are enhanced, your attacks have a chance to grant Storm Lash for up to 2 or 3 party or raid members for 8 seconds, causing them to do a little bit of extra nature damage as well. What that looks like if you go into a dungeon, you'll basically see you zapping your friends with lightning bolts and shooting lightning bolts at your friends, so they can do a little bit of extra damage. So, not a terrible thing as well. That's really about it for Enhancement Shamans. Really, really solid sustained damage, a good amount of burst damage. Of course, they got Bloodlust, which every raid needs these days. And they have stuns and interrupts. So, I mean, a really well-rounded class, in my opinion. A blast to play, a blast to have Doomhammer now, and they've always got some cool transmog stuff. So, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to write those below. As always, please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you out in the dungeons. Cheers.